Hi, welcome to the Paris Show. On this episode, the creative and cultural leader from Northern Pride, Steve Dunn, is going to be joining us. We're talking about inclusion, we're talking about so many amazing things, and also the co-founder of House of Happiness Sober Events. So don't go anywhere. So, creative and cultural leader Steve Dunn joins us from Newcastle right now on the show. Also, has just done a cheeky little workout and is looking very, very good. I can see those muscles popping a bit, I can see the gains there. But also to talk not only about muscle, but to talk about, the importance of inclusion, especially during Pride festivals as well. Steve Dunn, how are you doing, my darling, after your gorgeous little workout?
Very good, thank you very much. Got to get them workouts in before we get down to business. So it's great to see you.
Yeah, work hard, play harder, hey. Do you know what's amazing? The fact that you are so inclusive, not only to the trans community, non-binary people as well in general, but also people of colour, accessibility. You really, really do, push the boat out there and work really hard to make everybody feel like involved, protected as well with security and things like that. What goes through your mind in terms of inclusion and all that kind of stuff?
I think it's just very important to acknowledge that for Pride movement, it needs to be inclusive and needs to involve everybody. There is so many different kind of ways in which to be proud about your identity. There's so many different ways in which to celebrate your identity, not just through Pride season, but all year round, and that kind of sense of celebrating your identity can manifest its way in so many different fashions. That can be being at a Pride festival. That can be just being comfortable in your own skin and feeling loved by your family and your friends. It can be that moment when you get a gender recognition certificate and that sense of euphoria through that process. And what we try and do in Newcastle is try and replicate that. So all of those moments of joy and celebration are felt throughout the festival campaign, which, for all of those kind of moments in time, there is something there. We have to acknowledge that Pride has a duty of care. We see it very much here in the Northeast that it's a service provider. We are there to provide a service, and that is the output of the Pride Festival. And to be able to provide that service, we have to make sure that as much as we physically can, we provide that service for everybody, or at least there's bits for something for everybody. And we have to acknowledge that not necessarily a festival of our size or scale is for everybody. There might be, different small fringe events that are a little bit more important for those individuals. There's different kind of elements of Pride as well. So it's not just singing and dancing and having a drink. It's actually safe spaces. It's being with family. It's being with like-minded individuals and refuge and finding solitary kind of spaces that you can be yourself. And I think for us here in the Northeast, we work incredibly hard to do our best to achieve that. We don't necessarily always get it right, but we certainly learn that year on year. And, for example, you've mentioned there in terms of accessibility, we've just recently moved into the city to make sure that our event was accessible for those with mobility challenges. So, a grassfield site isn't necessarily as accessible as we would like. So, moving into the city gives us an opportunity to do that. It also gives us an opportunity to find venues and places that have facilities that people can use, whether that's changing places with hoists facilities, for example, or indeed, like I just said, quiet spaces, an opportunity to kind of find that quiet time and reflect.
I love that you have that space for quiet time. There's going to be so many people regardless of how old they are, that are neurodiverse and need that space, or just, even the family spaces as well, which is really lovely and so beautiful to see so many families and see all that love and support, for people that are part of the community and allies that come. But for me, having that space to be able to just breathe, having that space to just... Because pride can be a lot for some people, it can be overwhelming, but then you have that space, which I really appreciate, somebody that is autistic and ADHD, having that just to decompress.
No, exactly, and it's exactly that. And we were very fortunate in 2025 through our artist commission program that we do with Curious Arts and Creative Central NCL. We found an artist, they submitted an application in, and we went through their application, and it was like, wow, this is beautiful. Lady Kate did this installation. It was a fabric material installation along with water. We did that in a vacant shop unit. So Lady Kate and their crew went in, transformed that space using materials and the sound of water, and it became that very much tranquil space for the weekend where people could just go, not only admire the amazing talent that is Lady Kate, but just have that time to just sit, reflect, and also speak to other people who want that quiet time and that sense of peace and tranquility during, as you say, what can be a really busy and hectic weekend.
Yeah, 100%. I'm very excited for the future of Northern Pride and the space that you provide, the entertainment, the accessibility, everything. Like you said, nobody's perfect. Nobody can get things 100%, and there's always room for improvement. But at the end of the day, for the ones that I've attended, I've had nothing but the best time. I've seen everybody really love and enjoy themselves, and I'm excited for the future. Is there anything that you can tell us that you're currently working on? Something that perhaps we are allowed to know at this point of time?
Very good question indeed. It's kind of one of these where there's always cogs turning in the background. And, I mentioned before that we're always taking on board feedback. We listen to what the community has to say. We try and introduce new things or improve what's already there, and work very much across with all partners to make sure that we can deliver a safe and inclusive Pride for everybody. I think if I could tell you anything, what I would say is bigger, slightly better, and more to do.
Do you know what? I'm not a size queen, but bigger sounds fantastic, and I think everybody will absolutely love that because it's pretty big as it is. There's different spaces so that you can go to different locations, which is wonderful. But you said bigger, so I'm very, very, very curious to know in what way.
I think, for us, we've been on a journey over the past few years, and you've been with us on that journey. You were on the field with us during the torrential storm of 2023, where everything was covered in mud. And, that's when it was a turning point for Newcastle Pride in the region, because that's when there was that kind of moment in time of reflection. How do we build this event? How do we sustain this event for the future? How do we make it accessible? And that moment was really kind of that kind of turning point of let's rip up the playbook and kind of start again and listen to feedback and take things on board. And moving into the city not only allowed us to essentially grow the event and the ability to take up more spaces. So, for example, in 2025, we worked with over 20 different venues, places and spaces to essentially take over. And I think, being able to go into, for example, the Theatre Royal, the biggest iconic theatre in Newcastle, take that over for families, to allow queer families to go into the theatre, see other families like themselves, but actually go into that space because, we know that theatre can be, quite challenging for some families behind a paid barrier. Also, just the kind of overwhelmness of the size and scale of theatre. So being able to work with the Theatre Royal, open the doors and allow people to experience that during Pride was just phenomenal. So hopefully we'll see more of that to come.
I just wanted to ask you, have you got a positive message for the community at all, you know, for people that are struggling or wanting to go to Pride but they haven't been before? Any kind of message for the trans folks out there?
Yeah, so in 2025, we introduced our Trans Plus Zone, where we took over the amazing Alphabetti Theatre. And that really did provide a safe space for the trans and non-binary community to kind of come together. We know that it can be really challenging for members, particularly in the trans and non-binary community and gender diverse individuals, to kind of join in on Pride because of that kind of sense of fear or unease of what other people may say or perceive them to be. And I think creating safe spaces where individuals can go and be unapologetically themselves is the most important thing that we can do. The Trans Plus Zone that we delivered in 2025 was almost like a euphoria moment of actually, we need this space more than ever. We need that sense of safety and community, and the individuals that went to that space were just blown away by the kind of access to support and services that were there, the kind of signposting that we did to other organisations that specifically support trans and non-binary people. But also it was fully curated and delivered by the trans and non-binary community. We essentially handed over the keys and said, this is your space. You make this how you want it to be. And then on the night time, we had a wonderful cabaret, which was kind of hosted and curated by Max Brot and Rianne. And they created this amazing cabaret, which was called Pedro Pascal Says Trans Rights. And that was just phenomenal. And again, people went to that space with friends and also on their own to make new friends.
That's amazing. I love that it's called Pedro Pascal was involved. Amazing. He is, I love him very, very much, especially the mustache, just great taste and style. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure.
Stay right there because coming up, we have another guest on the show. Don't go anywhere. Joining us on the show right now is the fabulous LGBTQ+ activist and co-founder of House of Happiness, London's delivered ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza experience. Neil Hudson-Basing, welcome to the show. And it's so beautiful and so refreshing to see that you've created this kind of space as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to see you. The last time I saw you was in Manchester on the decks at the House of Happiness for our second event there, and you absolutely smashed it, as you always do, but really good to be here. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure is all mine. And you know what? Thank you for invited me to be part of that experience, because for somebody like watching who perhaps has friends that are sober, some people are quite limited on where they can go, and some people can react quite differently to people that are sober, whether it's for a reason, whether it's for medically, it doesn't matter. And you've created that space for everybody to come together and just enjoy themselves with the music, the vibe, the people. I really enjoyed myself. That was my first proper sober experience.
I love the fact that you called it a proper sober experience as well. One thing that when we launched the House of Happiness, one thing that we really wanted it to do is to be a proper clubbing event. And actually, we use the word experience, but we've even moved away from using that word experience as well, because it is actually a proper night out, but during the day. And so you've got all the ingredients there. You've got a fully stocked bar. It's just alcohol free. You've got the DJs, you've got the dancers, you've got the tunes, and you've got some added extras as well, plus all the vibes. So there is no compromise on it. It is a proper clubbing event. It's just during the day, and it's just booze and drug free.
Yeah, and do you know what is wonderful as well? You can go to bed by 10.
I mean, most people do say that, though. Most people love the fact that they've had a proper night out, but they've also got their steps in.
Yes.
And they can be at home in front of the telly at a decent time. Me, personally, sometimes I go out afterwards because I'm like, oh, I've had too many Red Bulls. But, yeah, you can be at home at a decent time and you feel like you've had a cracking time. And it does feel, because it finishes at 5 p.m, you do feel a bit naughty. Like, you walk out there and it's like, is this 5 p.m? Is this 5 a.m? Because you you've been in a dark club all day. You know, it's a proper club. So so it does feel like a little bit naughty.
I love that this is expanding, you know, London-based, but also it's expanding across the UK as well. Now, from the experience that I had, which was amazing, everybody had like paints and glitter and all sorts. It was really lovely. Is this something that is going to continue like on a monthly, quarterly basis? Is this going to expand to like all corners of the UK? Tell us more.
I mean, hey, world domination is the goal, right? But we've been going for 3 years. October will be our 3rd birthday. So we've done a number of events. Like, we're London based, you know, we're all me, Emma and Janie are all London based. So London will always be our home, but we've done 2 events in Manchester. We'd love to try it in more places. I think the difficulty with so many sober events and the way that the audiences and party people are treating events is it's really hard to sell tickets, right? That's what the events industry is seeing at the moment, and entertainment. People are not as loyal as they used to be. People want variety. People are spending their money on bigger events like Mighty Hoopla, Homo Block, festivals and stuff. So the thing is, you've got to constantly be touching base with new audiences, reaching out, trialing new things, showing variety. And it's difficult, you know, audience, particularly when it comes to events, their behaviours and their buying and attending patterns have changed since COVID. People are just not as reliable and consistent as they used to be. So we hope that we can continue going. We'd love to try it in new cities, but we're also one thing that we've been pretty adamant about at the start is that we're not gatekeepers around this, right? When we first launched, sober events looked one of 2 ways. They were either mindfulness or well-being focused. I'm going to use the word a little bit hippie because that's what they were, right? Or
I love
they were
that.
addiction and recovery focused.
Yes.
No, it is, you know, but that has no interest for me, right? You know, my first sober event, Morning Gloryville, absolute pioneers in sober events. But firstly, I couldn't get a Red Bull. You know what? Like, I needed a Red Bull. Like, I've already given up drugs.
I can see it in your eyes. You wanted a Red Bull so bad.
Honestly, Janie went out and sneaked me one in. But also, the music it was in a light room. There were kids running around, and then at the end of it, we all had to sit on the floor in a circle with a harp and a sound bath.
Wow.
That was my first sober clubbing experience, right? So that we are not any of those things. Also, neither of the 3 of us have an addiction and recovery story. So we also not on that side of things. So when we set about, we created something that was for everyone, whether teetotal, sober curious, or just taking a booze snooze for a day, a week, a month, whatever. And we really wanted to create something that appealed to all people, that was just centered on having a good time, regardless of what your backstory was, whether addiction and recovery, health, lifestyle, religion, whatever the reason.
Yeah.
And we are really passionate about other events popping up. So we're never, ever going to gatekeep or try and impose on what other people are doing. We'll collaborate, we'll offer advice. One thing I love about the sober space is that people are really supportive and friendly and lift each other up. On the whole, it's not always the case. There are gatekeepers out there. We've experienced it. But I love it when another sober event pops up because A, it's something that I get to go to and have a good time, and B, I don't have to organise it.
Do you know what? You are absolutely right. There are so many different reasons as to why people do not want to consume alcohol, and the fact that there's no like pressure to talk about it, or you know, it's not going to trigger anybody in any way, shape or form. Like you said, if you're just having a booze snooze, you know, if you just don't want to drink because you don't want to, that's absolutely fine. And there's going to be so many people that drive to events and they're like the designated driver that would usually go for, like, you know, the alcohol-free or the virgin cocktails or the soft drinks. But this is just such a gorgeous event space that really allows you to be your true, authentic self. It's very queer, which I'm very happy about because I love queer spaces and we need plenty more of queer spaces. But a queer space for sober people and sober-based events. This is so refreshing because for me, getting to the point where, yes, I don't mind and I love to have a drink, but also there are times where I don't want to or I don't need to, and it's really lovely to not have to be like, oh, I don't want to drink because of this and having to explain myself. Do you see what I mean? So it becomes more of a lecture rather than a night out. And this is why I love what you're doing right now.
Thank you so much. I mean, that means the world, and that is what it's all about. What I do love, and you're right, you don't have to go in there and explain yourself. It can be really exhausting when you're in big social circles, particularly when you're meeting friends of friends or strangers, and they're like, oh, are you having a drink? I'm like, no, I'm not drinking. You have to constantly. And I wrote an article for Low No Drinker magazine earlier this year about how coming out sober is quite similar to coming out in terms of queerness in so many ways. That constant justification. And what I love about the House of Happiness is people don't shy away from the stories, right? People talk at the House of Happiness because there's no barriers. People are not waiting for something to kick in. People come in with their whole hearts and whole energy. And what I love about the House of Happiness is you do get and relax people because they're just there to have a good time. So people do open up and they do share. And I think it does talk to the importance of sacred spaces like queer spaces, sober spaces, black only spaces. These spaces are really, really needed, but they are also really rare, and we need to nurture them and protect them and empower them to be built in other places. So I think that there is something so special about them, and which is why it's so important that people show up to them. If you want to see them thrive, if you want them to be there, you need to show up, and that comes in the form of sharing with your friends, telling your mates about it, actually buying a ticket, not just buying a ticket to support it, but buying a ticket and then showing up. Because it's not just for so many people that run these smaller events, it isn't a lot of them for us at the House of Happiness. It's not a money maker. Jesus, it's not a money maker. It's a passion project. So just buying a ticket is not enough. We need you to show up and bring the vibe as well.
Neil Hudson-Basing, co-founder of House of Happiness. Thank you so much for joining us on this very, very show. And thank you so much for watching at home, or wherever you are watching, by the way. We'll see you next time.